so we know it's recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, good evening. It's very, very nice to have you all here. I'm really excited for tonight's webinar and discussion. I think it's going to be a really great one. And today is also a special day because it's our National IA Day. As you can see, Ioana and I are both repping Romania with our traditional costumes. So for those of you who are Romanian, I hope you had a chance to celebrate today. And for those of you who aren't, maybe next year. But yeah, it's a really day of pride for us, and we are happy to share it with you one way or another. So to introduce myself, my name is Andreea Coscai. I am the founder and president of Her Time Romania. And the reason why I started our association is because I saw a need for more representation of women in higher positions of power and in all domains that there are out there. And so for that, we started the first networking platform for young women in Romania that's dedicated towards leadership. If you do want to join our community, since last year we have done a lot of types of events, from webinars such as this event to competitions like Her Business, entrepreneurial and social entrepreneurial competition with acclaimed businesswomen and money prizes. So we have a lot of exciting events that are accessible to everybody, no matter what your background is, no matter what your passion is. We want to come together and invest in each other. So if you do want to join our community, you can look us up on Facebook, where we have a networking group, or you can give us a follow on Instagram, where we post different campaigns to raise consciousness on feminist issues. Yeah, we also have merch, and you can donate and all of that. So if you do want to support us, there's ways. But to move on to today's topic, we will be talking about networking. What is it? Why is it important? How have others done it and been successful in it, and why you should do it too? Because I feel like the topic of networking is a little bit of an unexplored territory, especially at this age, 14 to 24, that's in our community. And so getting to practice this skill of networking is a really, really powerful tool for you in your career. And with us today, we have two very special guests. We have Ioana Petrescu and we have Sophia Hodgkinson. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
And to introduce our guest, Sophia is a social entrepreneur, health policy director with the European Medical Students Association, and fourth-year medical student. She believes that an MD doesn't have to automatically mean doctor anymore, and nor should it. Her emerging interests in the field are in the field of health policy, health, and ed tech, as well as the astounding progress in the field of data analytics and the possible application of these tools. These are leading her to discover and challenge current systems in education and healthcare to create solutions to global problems. Sophia holds a firm belief that it is our responsibility as future leaders to ideate how we can use traditional degrees in an interdisciplinary fashion to actively and positively impact the future of our society. So actually a lot along the lines of what we do in Her Time as well. And Ioana Petrescu is a senior fellow at the Mossavar-Rahmani Center for Business and Government and the president of Simply Green, pursisimpluverde. Dr. Petrescu is a former Romanian finance minister. She pursued policies to promote financial transparency, lower the tax burden for businesses, and keep fiscal discipline. She's an international consultant and runs the Center for Leadership and Innovation at the National School of Political Science and Public Administration in Bucharest. She was an assistant professor at University of Maryland, and she holds a PhD in economics from Harvard. Ioana's research project, Making Public Policy in Adolescent Democracies, Paths to Adulthood, explores good practices in the delivery of public goods and services in new democracies characterized by corruption, poor institutions, frequent political turnover, unclear legislation, and little transparency. So that's a lot to talk about, I'm sure, for both of you. And so I'm really excited to get this conversation going. Firstly, if you want to share with us a little bit about the journey you've had in your career so far, how you started, what motivated you, because you're both coming with very different backgrounds.
Ioana, do you want to go first? If you want to, you can. Would you prefer to start? I'm easy.
Oh, thank you. Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Well, thank you, Andrea, for the presentation. And thank you for inviting me. And I think it's great that you have so many young women here in this webinar in in a day in the summer when it's vacation, and I'm sure that there are other things to do. And the fact that you guys are young women and interested in networking, that's really amazing. I said yes to Andrea's invitation, first of all, because I wish that someone organized something like this when I was 14. I certainly do not remember similar endeavors back in the day to encourage women to be proactive and to start networking from a very young age. And the second reason I said yes was because right now I'm not in politics anymore. I'm running a Romanian NGO, and we're targeting a lot of our projects to young people 14 and up. And it's always very helpful to talk to as many of you even before we actually draft these projects. So it was fortuitous just for me as well. So you said sort of where we started. I think for me, the journey started in Bucharest when I graduated high school, and then I decided to go to the United States to study. And that was a very, very long time ago when not many people were doing that. And I remember specifically that that I had to go to another country to take the test to apply to go to the United States. And so it was a little bit of an adventure, but what motivated me to answer your question was that I felt that, there is more out there to be seen, more out there to learn. And I wanted to do that basically as soon as possible. That was my take as soon as I turned 18. So I moved to Boston when I was 19. And I stayed in Boston for about 9 years for school. So that was, bachelor and master's and PhD. And after I graduated Harvard, I moved to Washington. And I think that was a very eye-opening experience for me, because Washington, it's a very interesting town where people really do network a lot, where, who like it's really, really important. And you learn that the moment you start there. So I worked there in public policy for about 2 years at a think tank. And then I became an assistant professor at University of Maryland. And so I was teaching economics and public policy for a number of years. And then I got an opportunity to come back to Romania. And first I was an advisor to the Prime Minister on economic issues. And then I became finance minister. And that was the long story with the measures that you read that I hope nobody fell asleep through the long list. And so that was an amazing opportunity. I'm really glad that I got to do it, to come back and sort of give back to Romania. And I stayed in government in other positions, like head of the delivery unit, which means you're running a small unit at the center of the government that actually coordinates the priorities of the Prime Minister. And after that, I actually was involved in politics for a while. I was the vice president for a small party. And now I'm not in politics, and I have this green NGO. It's called Simply Green, or pursisimpluverde. And we are in almost all the country, in about half of the regions. And we're trying to really bring more awareness to people about the importance of climate change, the effects of our lives, and what all of us can do. So I think overall, I would say it's sort of I always was driven by this idea of, there is more out there. We should, discover new things, do new things. And that kind of led me to maybe more of an unusual journey where, I left the country. I came back to the country. Now I'm back to Boston at the Harvard Kennedy School. So I'm doing a back and forth, but I think just pursuing what else is out there new every single time. And I think I should stop here and let Sophia tell us about her journey. Thank you.
I mean, I'm really intrigued. So to be honest, you can carry on if you want. It sounds amazing. And I think that's an incredible story to share. So thank you so much. I'm really enjoying it myself, actually. And that was the other reason that I think, like you, I wanted to participate, because I'm very passionate about all causes, let's say, about female empowerment, especially when it comes from us. And also being 23, I feel that I'm starting, let's say, my career, even though it feels a little bit longer. 23, I don't feel like I started as late, let's say, as some of my colleagues at med school, and I'll explain why, but I definitely feel like it's the beginning, let's say, hopefully. So it's only the first steps. And so just a bit of background about myself. I'm Russian. So all of my family is Russian. I don't sound Russian because I was in Oxford at school. So not the American time of school, but like the British secondary school. So from 11 to 18. So I was in the UK. And then I didn't enjoy the environment as much as I thought. So I didn't want to stay there for medical school. So I left because I had an amazing opportunity to go to Italy, and I really wanted to. And so I'm studying in Italy now, learning my third, fourth language. I don't know, trying to anyway. And it's really fun so far. But aside from the background, I think it's important to say that I think I didn't realize how fortunate I was in some cases of wanting to do medicine and having a parent and a grandparent who are doctors. So being third generation doctor definitely helped me in the context of networking, because I was doing it essentially since I was, I don't know, 10, 9, when we were at dinners and sort of informal situations as well as formal ones, without realizing, because it's the idea of interacting with people in a way, I think, that is genuine, but also has a certain goal, let's say, without making it sound a little bit too focused on an agenda, but just understanding that there are ways in which everyone can help each other. So in terms of the journey, I think it started very early for me without realizing, and then continued throughout school, because I was very fortunate to get a scholarship, basically, for the full funding of my 8 years of going to a very good school in Oxford, which was obviously completely unaffordable for a newly immigrated family of Russians, essentially, no matter how comfortable and great my mum's, let's say, intellect and grades and job was. It's not really the same, because the UK is a little bit hardcore from the point of view for newly sort of settling families. And so within my school, actually, we were very lucky. It was an all-girls school. So of course, being an all-girls school, there's a huge aspect of focusing on us as girls, as women, developing. And there's been what I now understand almost a culture of ensuring that we're connecting at all points. So at least from maybe the second or third year, so when I was 12 or 13, we had social evenings where both our parents and us were invited to talk with other parents who were sort of introduced to each other. We were introduced to the parents who could help us, for example, with anything really. And when we got to the age of 16, where we made choices about subjects, which I think probably some of you will be doing since you're 14. I don't know how it works in Romania, but probably quite similar, something 14 to 16 maybe is when you make choices. And that was an important time because we were able to connect with people who could give us certain experiences which would be important for our sort of equivalent of CV. So building up the skills, the background, the understanding for ourselves, as well as obviously the paper, let's say. And networking became very natural, let's say, but I only realized it post factum. So you never really think that something is networking. And I think that's another thing, that a lot of you might do things in a way that's very natural and probably feel like it's not networking, but it probably is. And at the end of the day, I also want to say that even though I feel that relative to other people. I might be quite extroverted and enjoy the conversations, let's say. I don't think it's the case that you have to be extroverted. I think it's about finding your own way, essentially. And so my journey started unknowingly. I think it's continuing sort of unknowingly, and probably at some point it will evolve into something very conscious. But for now, I think a lot of it revolves around having discussions like now, for example, and getting involved in things you're passionate about, and it kind of flows naturally after that. So aside from that, I think I'd just quickly say that the work that I'm doing in policy, it sort of stopped, let's say, because I did a year at an NGO. The European Medical Students Association was a great experience, but for me, I sort of realized I'm not so keen on policy, actually, unlike Ioana. So I really enjoyed setting up OMNES Education, which is a company that focused specifically on equity of opportunity for young girls, but also just in general for students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, in acquiring basically any information, resources, let's say networking as well, to go to a different country, which isn't going to cost a lot, because going to the US, for example, or to the UK is not an option for a lot of people from, for example, Russia. But going to Italy is very affordable because of the prices, but also because of a lot of scholarship schemes and something like that. For some reason, it's a lot more common in Italy, maybe because the prices are lower. And so we published some books, and I had a great realization around what I was passionate about, because as much as I loved publishing the resources, I realized that there's actually much more efficient ways of sort of connecting with people and sharing information. So now we've stopped doing what we were doing. So we were publishing books, trying to get courses together, organizing things like this, webinars, etc., etc. But now I'm focusing much more on tech-oriented solutions, and it's a very different thing, very slow. And I have to sort of wade into a different pool of tech people who I, let's say, before 2 years ago, didn't really have any contact with. And that was shocking, but it was good in the sense of it was a new field for me, and I was very lost at first. And I was used to being, you know, a medic in between medics and feeling comfortable. And so I had to learn how to, let's say, network when I'm on the side of knowing less. And that was a new experience. And so I'm sure we'll talk about it in detail, but that's just the brief background. And right now I'm just working on tech solutions, also trying to write a book, but mainly just trying to pass exams, quite frankly, and get into 5th year. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you so much for sharing your stories. It's really interesting listening to them because you have such different interests and passions, but I can also sense a lot of similarities between your stories. So, let's get into what networking actually really is for those unfamiliar with it. And then let us know what networking means to you. Because as Sophia, you were saying, you started doing it when you were little without even knowing. So probably the way you see it has changed throughout time. So whoever wants to go first.
I think we can keep the same order. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Sophia. I think I agree 100% with Sophia's view that, you know, almost anything is networking. Don't think of networking, you know, you're going to a networking event and you're presenting your business card and that it's networking. Everything is networking whenever you are actively trying to make a meaningful connection with someone, then that is networking. And it can be, you know, in the family, it can be online, it can be at school, it can be after school, it can be within an NGO, you're volunteering, within a firm, you're doing an internship, and so on. So, so I think you just have to think a little bit outside the box, I think, and not, you know, necessarily wait for networking opportunities. You can create them for yourself. So let me give you an example where I had to do this for my NGO. I think like stories are much better than if we're giving theory. So or at least it worked in my academic experience. So when you are a small nonprofit, usually it's very difficult to do a project alone. You need to partner with a lot of nonprofits. But where do you find these nonprofits? And so what what I did at my organization in the last months was actually we participated in a competition, in a European competition, which was open to a lot of NGOs in Southern Europe, in Eastern Europe. And I think about 500 organizations participated in that particular competition. It's called Civic Europe, by the way, if you want to look at the ideas that they were posted there. The beautiful thing about this, which was unusual to regard to this type of NGO project competitions, was there was on the projects and the names of the NGOs were actually available online. And you could see what ideas someone proposed and what organization and their website. So what myself and my colleagues did, we actually went through all of these ideas and figure out, okay, which ones would be some ideas that we are interested in, and we have a lot of similarities to what we do in our NGO. And we made a list of their website, and then we looked for their emails. They only had listed their website, and we had to look for emails, on website in Polish and Bulgarian. It's not impossible, it can be done with a little bit of effort. And we actually wrote a personalized email to every single NGO explaining what we want to do, and that we want to create a larger consortium of NGOs to apply together for financing, because that's actually much easier to do if you're more than one, to actually exchange best practices, because I'm sure that a lot of us got to experience the same problems, and maybe some of them actually found some solutions. To really collaborate, it's much easier to do like a cross-country collaboration if you already have the networks in those countries. And it actually worked wonderfully, because about 50 NGOs actually showed up to our online meeting, and then they agreed to be in this consortium. And we already partner with 3 of them in a larger project we are planning to do on fighting domestic violence in Europe. So my point is, this was networking. I didn't go to a party or to a networking event and I started, introducing myself and shaking hands. But this is, one way it can be done. I'm not suggesting necessarily you should do that. And especially if you are underage, you should not go around and just email and meet random people online without your parents knowing. But it is one way you can do it. And in general, I think you should try to create these connections any way you can. And I think that's networking. And another thing I would just want to emphasize how much I agree with what Sophia said. It's not a right way and it's not a perfect way. And, some people are more shy, some people are more outgoing, but there is a way to do this for everyone. You just have to find your way. So, it's anything that creates a connection that you can maintain and will have value later. That is networking, no matter what shape or form it has. And I think I'm going to let Sophia, I'm sure she has more interesting examples.
I think different. I'm sure that none are more or less interesting, but for me, I'd say networking, I've thought about it a lot, because for me, like Andrea actually said, it has changed massively from a sort of rigid concept of meeting people for a purpose. It became finding allies, essentially. So once you have an understanding of what your own goals are, and I think that's the fundamental point of, let's say, evolving in the years of your school life and your university life, and I'm sure beyond, but especially in the very early stages of our career, I think it's important to reflect constantly, to self-reflect. So it doesn't have to be the case that you're pursuing one thing. If you want to pursue multiple things, go for it. If you want to pursue one thing, go for it. But the main idea, at least from my personal experience, that I think we need to have is you need to have the self-reflection of, is this something that I feel really aligns with my values? Is this helping me evolve? Is this something that I truly believe in? And once you have an understanding, even if it changes at the point of you understanding that, for example, for me, women's issues have always been important. I don't know if it's because of my school, my family, or anything in my environment, but I always knew that that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I'm going to carry it through in my academic work, in my work as a doctor. And once you realize that that is something you're passionate about, you can explore. So whether you're trying to organize some sort of event, even if it's for 5 people, even if it's for 2 people, go for it, because you might meet another person and then you can join forces like Ioana was talking about. So it's all about finding allyship, basically, and finding people who are passionate about similar things, but maybe slightly different, and giving this sort of evolution, let's say, of your thought. And networking for me is just that, the idea of taking what you're passionate about, bringing it as a shared experience. It's like making friends. So you're not trying to get something out of a person, you're just trying to bring your own personality, your interests, and then if they're shared, that's even better. And then you can open your eyes to different areas of maybe the same problem that you're trying to fight.
I think that's wonderful, both of your answers, and you really complemented each other with what our participants should know, because Sophia, you talked about self-reflection, and I think this is not very much talked about when you talk about networking, but it seems like to be such an important part. Like, what are you bringing? What are your values, and how do you connect with people? And Ioana as well, you brought in the practice and really how to do it. And this is what I want to ask you about next, because again, at this age for our participants, it's probably a little bit unclear for them how to do it. It's not really in our culture at school teaching us how to do this. It's sort of something that you have to teach yourself. And everybody has different opportunities, right? So where did you find your opportunities to network? You've already kind of touched upon that. If you do want to expand on it, and how do you create these opportunities? Ioana, you were talking about that, and that's really valuable, I think, to create your own if you don't just have them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think sometimes you don't have these opportunities, they're not created for you. And especially if you are a young woman in Romania, there are not necessarily that many initiatives like yours. That's why yours is really welcome. If you are in a country like US, I think there are a little bit more opportunities out there that you can take advantage, but that does not stop one from building them. So I would say, just to give sort of concrete example for young women, especially if you are already in college, things are getting a little bit easier because opportunities are there, because you can go to a public talk at your university, right? That is a wonderful opportunities to network after the talk. You can go and become a volunteer or do an internship somewhere where you're interested in, because Sophia rightly so said about self-reflection and figure out where your passion is, and you're going to figure it out by trying many things. So most of us do that, and the lucky ones actually at the end of all this trying find the things that they're passionate about. And so these are other opportunities to network and to make this type of connections. When I started, I was mentioning my first job was at the think tank in Washington, D.C. We were doing public policy. They were very good about this somehow. The whole thing, maybe because it was Washington, D.C. and because it was about public policy, I think it was just meant for networking, in the sense that even we had the lunch place at the think tank, and there at the table, you can sit with the scholars and the experts and the interns, and it was sort of like mingling, and you get to have these very interesting conversations with more senior people in Washington over lunch. And there were a lot of seminars going on where they didn't participate only the people at think tanks, but there were people coming from Washington, from the Hill, as we're calling it, or from other think tanks, and you had an opportunity to meet other people interested in that particular subject. So really the opportunities were plenty. And I think whether you are in US or you are in Romania, I think once you get to college, you should be sure that you are reaching these opportunities through extracurricular activities and talks and other type of jobs like volunteer and internships, because school is really important, but it's part of it. You are there in college also to learn much more besides what the classes have to offer, and make new friends and meet people who maybe they're very different from you. That would probably open some opportunities and some ideas and some maybe paths in life that maybe you didn't think about it at all when you started school with something in your head. So I think those are some specific things that you can do when you are very young.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's perspective of sort of when you're at university. I would definitely agree with it, because I feel like it's much more integrated into the culture of universities. Different, obviously, countries take it to different degrees of seriousness, let's say, and commitment. For example, I think Italy is not as committed, for example, to networking as maybe the US is, because also it's such a different culture. And maybe I want to say a little bit more about the school part, because I was just thinking about it now, and I felt very fortunate with the type of school that I had, because we had a lot of initiatives which put the organization of events like work networking, information evenings, information lunches. Actually, in my school, we had a term called prefect, and this was a group of students in the later years, so 16 to 18, who had certain roles, and mine was a career prefect, for example. And so I had to organize all of the stuff to do with work and networking and all of the things to do with sort of taking opportunities beyond school. And I found it very helpful for myself, because I was doing something that I wanted to do for my school. So it looked good, let's say, it felt good, but also I was doing something that was useful. So one thing that I would say is definitely, you don't have to have an amazing school in some progressive, let's say, the country that seems like it has loads of money and loads of resources and culturally integrated networking mentality. You just need to find at least one person who, especially when you're at school, if you're sort of a minor and you don't have the freedom, let's say, or the credence of being someone, let's say, that you can approach a random professor and say, okay, I'm this person, I'm from this university, I'm studying this, I have this passion, etc. The very beginning, I think it's just nice to express your general interest. I'm really passionate about finding out more about this, just very wide scope, general area, and just find someone who sort of fits the subject. They don't have to be an expert, but maybe they can allow you to use some sort of official way of contacting some people. And contacting some people can be anything. It can be Googling, for example, doctors, because I'm a medic, I always think of doctors, but it can be anything. So you can Google doctors in city X and find some emails or phone numbers and write polite emails or call politely and have a script, for example, that you're speaking like from the heart, of course, but also in a way that's professional and going to feel very coherent. For example, when I was doing it at school, I had to obtain some sort of placement before you're allowed in hospitals officially, which was a fun paradox to deal with, but it was actually genuinely a lot of fun, kind of exhausting, because I had to call, I think, something like 100, 200 different, not doctors, let's say, but clinics, because you can't often directly call doctors, but if I could, I would. And then lots of them said, no, no, no. But in the end, I made an incredible connection with a doctor that I'm sure I'll talk about later, because she's a woman and has been incredibly instrumental in my life. And it's all about mentorship. And I hope we'll have a question about that, because I'd love to talk about it, just that specifically. In general, I think it's just very important to take the opportunity that you're offered, let's say, like Ioana said, in the sense of if there's something extracurricular and there's a speaker, you will have the opportunity to speak to them. So don't feel shy at the end. Even if you do, I felt extremely awkward and extremely nervous, so many thousands of times coming up to people. But one of the important things to do is to do it. For example, one specific example that comes to mind is when I was actually 14. And my dad was coming to a conference in, again, this is a specific example of mine because I'm in sort of the, let's say, environment that I wanted to go in. So it's a very privileged position to be in, but it doesn't mean it's exclusive. You could be in that position through your school, through a parent of a friend, through an extracurricular activity, through someone you know somehow. And we were at a conference and there was an amazing cardiothoracic surgeon speaking, and he was receiving some sort of amazing prize. I didn't really understand the context, but I came up and I sort of asked at the end, like, hi, I'm hoping to be in medical school. So I'm not at medical school, but I'm really hoping to be. And I wanted to ask you if I could, have your email so I could ask you a few questions and maybe go for shadowing a placement. And, I was completely red and sort of not looking professional, let's say, as I would hope to be. But you just have to do it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you look, as long as you're polite and respectful and you genuinely have an interest and you're not sort of pretending. I think people recognize that, and you'll be surprised how many people want to help you. That was one of the main things that I noticed, is that whenever I asked, 99% of the time people responded, and it was amazing. So just shoot the shot, I'd say, and make your own opportunities, I'd say, as well. It's very important. So yeah.
Totally. Thank you, both of you, again, for your answers. I think they're really insightful and resourceful. Everyone who's here, I hope you're taking notes, because these are all really great pieces of advice. And I totally agree, firstly, that high school and university are great places to just start creating connections, long-term connections with people, and then mentors as well. But most of all, really, like Sophia said, just go for it, because the worst thing that can happen is a refusal. And like Sophia said, again, that doesn't happen most of the time, because people really do want to help you and mentor you, so that you can grow the same way that you got to make your connections. I also got my first internship. Is just about asking, sending a message, whatever you can do. Don't be shy, because nothing bad can happen. You have great intentions. So talking about allyship, which you both touched upon in some way or another beforehand, and getting your own community, how has that shaped your professional life? How important has it been for you to benefit from a support group because of your networking experience, and how has it influenced and elevated your career?
We'll go the usual way, I'm guessing. Okay. Well, I think in general, having a support group, it's really, really important. I think you can't do anything in life just alone. Even if you think you're going to be an IT programmer or something like that, you still will need a team. You can't just do everything by yourself. And in most, I would say 99% of the big tasks that you might have ahead and you might have goals to accomplish, you need a great group of people to be there, to bring different skills on the team. You can't have all the skills in the universe, to cheer you up. That's very important. You can't do things alone without someone really encouraging you along the way. And in general, for that, you need to create sort of this support group and to build these long-lasting work relationships with people. So and I would stop here to emphasize something, because I felt that maybe the first part of our discussion focused a lot on how to network, and the implication was that we're always networking up in the sense of I'm a young woman and I really want to talk to this big shot who's 40 or 50 and accomplished in their career. But it doesn't have to be that way. Networking is also important when you're doing it with peers and people who are at the same level and age as you are, because you can create a support group and grow together, and you're going to see that in time, this relationship where you put time really pay off the most. I mean, most of your peers are going to grow up and have their own skills and their own influence, and of course that's going to be valuable in time to you as well. So I think both of these are important, networking towards people who are already accomplished and maybe they can help you today, but also making sure you're creating a group of people that you can rely on, that are peers, and you grow together in terms of influence. I think having this group, it's not only important in terms of, the value of the connections, but also you can exchange ideas. That's also very, very important. And you don't have to be just an academic to do that. In any type of business, you can't come up with the newest ideas just by your own, because you're going to just recycle your own ideas and your own biases. And then if you have this group of people that hopefully is very heterogeneous, so don't look to bring in your group of support just people that are identical to you, because they're also going to come up with the same ideas. But if you have people there who maybe have like an arts background, or maybe they grow up in another country, or they went to a different high school or completely different university, they're going to take your idea and actually think it through different way and analyze it completely different. So that's very important. So I would say that these are important things. I would also add, I think it helps with your self-confidence to have this group of support. These are not small, unimportant details. No one really gets successful if you don't have the right team next to you, if you doubt yourself, so I think that's what such a group can bring, whether it's a peer group or a group a little bit more heterogeneous that has maybe older people in it, younger people in it. So definitely consider starting building this support group today. I was very lucky that in my organization today, I'm actually bringing people that some of them I know them from first grade, and some of them I know them from high school, and some of them I met in my political career, and I took them over with me to the NGO from the political party. But across the time you're building this network, you also have time to really not test these people as much as get to know them a little bit better and understand what skills they have and to what extent you can rely on them. So it's very, very important, and it can help you in all these aspects, not necessarily just skills or advancing on the career ladder.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that was just said, so I'm not going to add too much. I would just like to summarize my point of view. I think that exactly as Ioana said, the idea of challenging yourself and challenging your own thoughts and your perceptions helps with everything that I said before that was important to me in my experience of sort of trying to grow and develop my career, which is essentially, yes, you're trying to find your passions, but also you're trying to challenge them. Because for me, a support network has always been very important. And actually, because I moved around a lot when I was younger, in terms of living in different countries, etc., I got kind of used to making some friends, but then leaving, and there was nothing so concrete. And so I felt that definitely when I was in the later years of school, and it was much more difficult than it is right now to feel like I'm moving in the right direction and to actually make active steps. Because like you said, Ioana, it's actually so important to have a group of people, or at least someone, not just your parents, because parents are great, but you can't necessarily, not everyone has, first of all, the same parents. Not everyone has, let's say, parents who could be understanding, especially if you're going in a direction that challenges their views, but it's what you want, you should do that. And for that, you need other people in your corner, essentially. It could be anyone. It could be, for example, for me, it was definitely a number of women. And I felt much more comfortable with women when I was much younger, because I felt like they would understand the difficulties that I felt like I was experiencing, or I was worried about, and certain insecurities that I was having. For example, wanting to go into surgery is a classic male-dominated field, which can be very cold and uninviting, let's say. And I'm comfortable with that, and I have been for a while. But also, I know for a lot of us in medicine, it can be a very big obstacle. And so finding people who you feel genuinely comfortable with, it doesn't have to be women. If you want to have someone who speaks, for example, if you're in a different country and you want someone who's Romanian, because they might understand the transition from going from Romania to a different country, they might understand the certain difficulties that you have, or if you're Russian, or if you're Spanish or Italian, whatever, you need to sort of understand what you feel more comfortable with. And once you have a contact, I think it can evolve into something very beautiful, because for me, it was like that. And a support network is definitely an accelerator, let's say, to your own understanding, let's say, of what you want, and it helps you work faster and better. And it just makes you, I think, a better team player, but also sounds a bit cliche, let's say, but a better person, because you learn how to listen to opposing views often, and to people saying, no, this isn't the perfect way, and your ego shrinks because you start realizing that it's not all about sounding clever or smart, but it's about progress. And so if that progress comes from you being sometimes feeling like you're being ripped apart, then that's fine if it's a healthy thing. If it's not in a toxic way, I think it's an amazing thing, because it allows you to shed all of the excess that you don't need, and then to just move on only with the necessary components, and probably make you much more skillful, let's say, at what you're doing. So I would totally agree with what was just said in summary.
Yeah, I also could not agree with both of you more. And I can also tell you from our experience in our team at Her Time, it's been really life-changing to create this community. And so for everybody participating today, if you do want an opportunity, here are two of them from us. One of them is if you want to join our team, we are recruiting now. And the second one is that we recently launched a networking club. So we meet bi-monthly online, and we talk about different topics. Everybody comes with their different experiences, and we created the type of environment that both of you were just talking about right now. I will leave the links to that in the chat if you want to join. But the last question from me before we move on to the Q&A is, what are some practical pieces of advice, such as websites, different platforms, or resources like this that you would recommend to participants today that would be accessible for everybody?
So I think I mentioned a little bit in terms of, just going to events, and especially events that you are interested in, and try to make these connections, whether they're academic events or public events or school events or after school events or extracurricular events or all of these things. I think in terms of practical advice, I will pick up from where Sophia left, because I think it's a very important point that she mentioned about listening. Okay, we all think that we know how to listen. Very few actually do know how to listen. And it's very important when you're trying to create this relationship, because that's why you're there. You're not there just to network and say your name and hand the business card. The successful networking is when you create a connection and you have the ability to actually maintain it. And for that, you need to be able to listen to what the other person is saying, because in addition to having your own passion and being able to articulate it nicely and politely, as Sophia said, if you also have the ability to listen carefully to what the other person is saying, to understand what their passion is, what their interests are, you're going to be much more likely to create this very powerful connection and actually get something out of that interaction, rather than just checking off the list that I met that many people and I said my name to this many people, right? It's, in the end, we are interested in building something at the end, not checking a list. Okay, so this part about listening is very important, and it's important because by listening, you're actually expressing interest in also what the other person has to say. And I noticed that maybe in the terms of what not to do, people sometimes get so wrapped up into what they're trying to accomplish in terms of their networking that they're losing this very personal aspect of it. Because in the end, you're forming this relationship only with people that you click and they remember you and they have a good opinion about you. And they usually will have, most of them, they would click and have a good opinion about you if they also feel that you are interested in what they have to say and what they do. So I would say that at the core, this is what you need to do. It's very difficult. It sounds simple. It's very difficult. But I think if you manage to do this, so both say what you're interested in, but also listening and understanding what the other person wants and make that person also feel important, I think it's much more likely that you're going to have a successful sort of networking outcome. And I would leave you with this. I've been through many sort of job market searches, as they're called in US here, where you're looking for a job. And I heard many recruiters discussing. And I think most of the time when they get a bunch of CVs and they select the CVs, all of the people with those CVs that were being selected, they have the right qualifications, they went to good schools, they have the right grades. So it's not really a matter of really questioning your ability when you meet face to face with these people. It's really a matter of, as they're putting it, we're going to hire that person that if we're stuck in the airport with them for 24 hours because our plane is delayed, we would enjoy having that person in the airport with us. So that tells you sort of how people think in the end. It's a personal interaction, and you have to keep that in mind for networking as well. So keep that in mind. It's about listening. It's also about the other person, and really building a connection that you can invest later in it, such that it would be helpful to you at some point into the future.
I think from the point of view of practical resources, I think it's a very, let's say, subjective thing to answer. From the point of view for each one of us, it's different. For each discipline, it's different. So to say one single one, the only thing that really comes to mind, absurdly or not absurdly, is LinkedIn, even though sometimes it feels super dry, let's say. And for medicine, for example, it's not the best thing for students, for example, to figure out opportunities, because it's the flow of it is not what, let's say, has worked for me. But connecting and finding people who are interested in the same thing through events, through organizations, through hashtags, etc., it's very useful, because I think us as the younger generation of people who are very digital, we spend so much time on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, maybe less so now. And I think LinkedIn is a useful use of your time, let's say, because don't underestimate the power of sort of starting a profile and gaining connections and, for example, posting about things you're interested in and just talking, because you can talk online. For example, if it's something that is not as accessible for you or not as comfortable for you to talk in person, then feel free to talk online. But obviously in a safe way, in a sort of secure websites like LinkedIn, maybe Twitter, if you're sort of looking at particular people, because you can find so many academics, so many researchers, so many influential people in your specific area of interest on these platforms, because they're using it for connecting and sort of amplifying their voice, and you can do the same. Regarding specific maybe platforms for medicine, I honestly can't really think of any, except because for students, again, that's a massive gap that actually my company hopefully and my team will be filling up very soon. So as soon as we've done it, I'm going to send it to you, and anyone who wants to be a doctor, please sign up and it will be amazing. But it's still a little while from now. I think just try and look, because even on Instagram, even though I just said it in the sense of don't spend time on Instagram, because to be honest, we just waste so much of our time on social media, at least from my experience. I think there are useful things you can do on Instagram. For example, you can find those sort of microcosms of people wanting to do the thing that you're interested in. You can find influencers, let's say, who are talking about things that you're genuinely passionate in. For example, women's rights, or anything really to do with what you're interested in. So doing a bit of research, whether it's on Google, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Instagram, is, I think, a good idea, and you will be able to find the information. And I think aside from that, I don't have anything super practical right now to suggest, but those should be a good start, and then you'll probably find someone who can tell you a much more educated thing in your field to go to.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, both of you, for your advice. I really love it because you came with the physical and the virtual aspects of it. I think both of them are so important. Um, and another piece of advice would be to just research on your own networking websites, and you're going to find a lot of them. So yeah, really do make use of this virtual space, especially now. It's a really powerful tool. So I think we can get into the Q&A session. We have a first question in the chat from Beatrice, and she's asking, how can you network when you are new to a country and you have no idea where to start? So I'm sure you guys have a lot of great advice on this.
We're going in order, I'm assuming. Yeah, it is very difficult. I must admit that as someone who moved from one country to another and back and forth and trying to readjust to the cultural norms. So I think cultural norms are one aspect that you need to be aware. And of course, you're going to slowly learn about them, as you're doing more of this networking, because it's difficult to teach. And also, I would say something else to keep in mind is that there are very much differences across fields, even within the same country. And I think Sophia rightly touched on this as well. So I've worked in the private sector, in the public sector, NGO, politics. They couldn't be more different in the way that they're approaching it. So it's learning by doing. And I think the easiest way is actually to start where you are. So if you are in a new country, probably you are a student in a new country, right? So clearly the contact that you have, it's first the school. So you can start from your colleagues and classmates and sort of enlarging the circle from there. And it can lead into sort of unexpected places. You don't have to think that, oh, if I just network with a bunch of my students, I'm going to meet just my students. No, just to give you another example, when I first came to US, I was an undergraduate first year, so I joined the college Democrats club, and because we were in a political club, we got to do canvassing, which is like a political activity for the Democratic Party, and we started canvassing in different states of US. It was a year before the presidential election, and because of that, we got to meet other political people who were doing the same thing from other schools and so on. So that's why I'm saying, start where you are. And that might actually lead you, if you follow, your interest, to other people with that interest that not necessarily at your school. So I think the advice can be applied to other situations. If you are, let's say, at work in a different country, right? You can start with your coworkers and their network, and then enlarge from there. So I don't think I have something more specific about that, but Sophia also has a lot of international experience. I'm sure she has something to add.
For sure. I mean, it's actually really nice that both of us have had the experience, because I think it's also at different times, let's say, because before I moved to the UK, I lived in Egypt and India as well, but I wasn't networking. I was 8 and 9, so it wasn't really the same. But it was a very conscious difference that I felt. I still don't feel really British, if that makes sense. No matter how much I sound like I'm, let's say, integrated, I don't feel like I am, let's say, British to the point of feeling so comfortable. But I also, to be honest, don't really feel Russian, so not fully. So I feel like a sort of in between. And in the same way, I feel like when you get to a new country, it's not only about feeling comfortable, let's say, with networking because you don't know where to start. You also just don't know where to start in general most of the time. Like I really understand how to connect with anyone because I was, first of all, younger, and maybe I didn't really consciously think about it. So when you're plopped into somewhere like a school or university or a training program or whatever you're doing really in the country that you've moved to, I think the best thing to do is sort of take a step back and sort of breathe, and then just sort of analyze the options that you have, in the sense of, of course, you can go to essentially the resources around you. And the best thing to do, I think, is just to think who will be the person who will make you feel most secure. Again, I think I can't emphasize this enough. I think it's all about your security. Whatever you feel comfortable with, you should do, in the sense of when you have the opportunities, you don't have to take all of them. You don't have to take any of them really, but you should probably if you want to network and if you want to build the foundations. But it is important to start off with building your confidence with someone or some way that's comfortable for you. And so when you move to a new country, I think the best thing to do is to give yourself some time to adjust, to get into the rhythm of things and to see what's out there. And then you're going to get exposed to opportunities like Ioana was talking about, and you will feel comfortable and safe and also secure in what you're bringing to the team, let's say, and what they can bring to you. And you don't feel maybe as, let's say, threatened or uncomfortable for whatever reason. And so I think it's important to just give yourself time to just get in and integrate to a small degree, and then figure out who do you have a good relationship with, and maybe they're in the same field, let's say, or even in a different field, but they can help you. And asking for advice is always very important. So it doesn't actually have to be from anyone who's specifically doing the exact thing that you want to do. It can be anyone you have a good relationship with. So whichever professor or friend that you have a good relationship with in that space that's very new for you and probably for them as well. I think it's just important to talk and vocalize your feelings a lot of the time, because you don't need to go in strong and sort of say, I'm perfectly fine, I don't feel scared, I'm not worried. You can say that you're a little bit, unsure of where to go, that you would love to have some advice because you're new and there are lots of things probably you don't know about, because I found that a lot of opportunities aren't visible, which is sort of ridiculous because the whole point of opportunities is so that you take them and so that they're offered. But a lot of the time they're not as visible as you want them to be. So just take it slow, or if you don't want to take it slow, go fast. But for most people, I would say take it slow, because I think that's the best way to build your confidence, slowly and calmly, and just don't necessarily get too far in too early, because maybe it will damage your confidence, or the opposite. Don't go too slowly if you feel like you are confident enough. So don't doubt yourself, but also, I don't know, basically just listen, I think, to yourself, but also to the people around you. I think it's the most important thing that I've learned over the last 10 years, but also maybe even earlier, because that's one of the main mantras of my mother. And as much as I like to think that I know everything, I don't at all. And I think listening to people around you is very important, especially family. If you have a if you have a good relationship, not everyone does, but if you have people who already support you, they will be able to give you advice because they know you better. So I think just think about it, take it slow, don't lose confidence if someone rejects you, because they don't know anything either. And even though they might seem like they're older and that they have great accomplishments, I think that you are able to achieve whatever you want. And if someone just says, no, I don't want, like, no, you're not good enough, or something like on the lines of like that, but maybe not as dramatic, don't necessarily take it in, let's say. You need to listen, but also have some barriers to defend yourself, because you should understand that you are able to do whatever you want to do. And I think that's also a crucial point of being in a new place, of having your own back, essentially, I would say, at least from my experiences.
Yeah, those are really great points, both of you. Thank you so much. And as someone who's also been from place to place, I can totally feel that there is so much uncertainty when you get to that new place and when you're trying to figure out how things work. But I think you've both given some great pieces of advice, like starting close, so that you don't feel too overwhelmed as well, but also not having to take all the opportunities, because you might feel pressured to be an overachiever, but that will not always be in your benefit. So yeah, thinking wisely about what opportunities are right for you is also a great piece of advice. And I think we have time for one last question, if that's okay with you as well. We have another one in the chat. How do you introduce a project to somebody? And here, I don't know if you want to get straight into it, or if you want to ask for a clarification on what kind of project or what's the objective here?
For me, it's the same. I don't know if you want to clarify, Ioana. For me, I would say there's generic things that you can say for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If you want,
Great.
okay, we can switch up. We can make it fun for the last one. I think when you're introducing the project, one of the hardest things for me was to summarize your idea. So clarity. No one cares about eloquency from the point of view of using complicated words and trying to make sentence structure sound appealing. You just have to have clarity in your head. What is the most important point that you want to communicate to this person? Because a lot of the time, especially as I've gotten older and started working more in sort of digital health, entrepreneurial spaces, tech-oriented sectors, I think the people that I've interacted with have had less and less time for me, let's say in the second when you meet them. So you have to make an impression that's strong. So pleasant, but strong. And for that, you need to have clarity in your own mind. So whatever your idea is, write it out in full, write it in the 27 pages that you need, and then condense it to 10 seconds. And that's a very difficult thing to do, but it's the most important skill I think that we need to learn as we progress, because it's about clarity of communication. And clarity of communication shows a number of things, I think, about yourself, that you're professional, that you are analytical, that you are truly strategic in what you're trying to explain, but also in how you're trying to communicate with the person. And if you have an understanding of what your project is and it's summarized in 10 seconds, you can also use an extra 5 or 10 seconds to say, I feel based on your credentials or based on the information that I know about you, you would be an amazing fit, let's say, or I would love to have your advice on this part of the project. So it doesn't have to be that the entire project needs to be given an opinion on, but maybe specifically, for example, if someone is a doctor, I want to ask them, for example, they're a gynecologist, and I want to ask them specifically something about gynecological aspects of my idea of the project. And that's an important thing to do. You need to understand what you're coming to them for. And if you do that, I think you introduce the project in an amazing way, and it doesn't really matter what the project is, let's say, because it's a template, as much as I have experienced myself.
Completely agreed with what Sophia was saying. I would add another thing. Also, you should be careful about when you are making this particular pitch. You should be aware of, appropriate and inappropriate times to make this. Just because you caught someone, on the elevator as they were running to catch a cab or something, does not mean that that's really appropriate to make this pitch, or to misrepresent the reasons why you might want a meeting with that person to give this pitch, because this is not a good way to start a relationship with that particular someone and financing for your project or things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. But everything else that Sophia says, it's absolutely true. You should always learn to summarize a large idea into a clear, much smaller one that you can tell. And the story in the economics grad school that we were told was that, no matter how complicated your PhD thesis is, you should have a version that's 1 hour. You should have a version that's 15-minute version, and you should have an elevator speech like the one that Sophia was saying, where in less than a minute someone really understands what problem you're trying to solve, how you're trying to solve it, what is new about it, and what you want from that. So that's the part I would add. And I would add, in case the person asking this question is thinking about business, and I think it's always helpful to try at least to go through a pre-accelerator or an accelerator program, because they would teach you, including how to make these pitches and what are people who finance this idea looking for. And it's a great experience. I'm on the board of Tech Lounge that organizes innovation labs in Romania, and we do that, and we certainly spend a lot of time with the ideas that we select in the program to learn them how to pitch and how to present their ideas. But that's sort of for business. But the pitching part actually applies to anything in creation, not only business.
Yeah, thank you again. I actually learned about the term elevator pitch in a screenwriting class. So here you go, proof that it gets applied everywhere. But as a summary for our participants, an elevator pitch is super important. And here, I gathered some notes from you for everybody who's still with us. Tell them what it is, what's new about it, look for the right person to help you, be specific. And also be mindful of people's time and if it's a right moment or not. So because of time constraints, I think we will end it here. I'm really so thankful for both of you being here, for sharing your experiences and for telling us your stories and really how we can elevate our careers and, get a strong start to them. Thank you for everybody participating. Thank you to the team for making this whole event a reality. It's been really amazing to get to know all the guests and to also see the participants face to face because, our project is exclusively online. So these kinds of meetings are really special to us. And as I said before, if you do want to support us, you can find us anywhere for Time Romania. And we will also be sending out a feedback form soon. If you want to let us know if you like this event, what you didn't like about it, what more you would like to see. And yeah, we will see each other again tomorrow. But thank you again, everybody, for being here and especially to the guests.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
And of course, I just want to add very briefly, I think we can just share our LinkedIn or whatever, and it will have our emails anyway that's important to contact us. And so I think that might be useful if anyone wants to talk at any other point. So
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We can share that with the participants.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you again. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for organizing it, Andrea. Thank you for organizing it, and good luck with the rest of your network, and not only networking, the webinars this week.
Yes, thank you so much.
Keep us in the loop. Bye.
For sure, we'll do. And thank you again, really, for being here. It's been really great finding out about your journeys and getting inspiration for what's to come for myself as well. And we'll keep in touch. If you need anything, we're here.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
Connect, and it will be great to chat later on as well. And have a wonderful evening. And I don't know what time it is in Boston, but I think it's -5, right? So it's
No, yeah. Well, no, it's -6 to you because you're in Germany, so
Yeah.
it's about 1:20. Yeah.
okay. So have a nice rest of day, and
I will.
Bye.
Very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. And Andrea, are you gonna post this somewhere online, or it's just for? Okay.
I forgot to